Vegapunk. Dr. Vegapunk is the leading scientist of the SSG and in the employment of the Marines. His work includes discovering the secrets and uses of seastone, the secrets of how devil fruit powers work, the co-discovery of the Lineage Factor and its applications, the creation of the Pacifista and Seraphim, and various other scientific achievements that are said to be at least 500 years ahead of current technology. He hails from the technologically advanced Karakuri Island and currently resides on Egghead, where his laboratory is located. Before being employed under the world government, Vegapunk was part of an outlaw scientific research team known as MADS, where he worked alongside other notable scientists such as Caesar Clown, Vinsmoke Judge, and Queen. The team was eventually arrested, and Vegapunk was later integrated into the Marines as its head scientist after MAD's dissolution. He and his satellites are major allies to the Straw Hats during the Egghead arc. Satellites. At some point in the past, due to being occupied with his inventions, Vegapunk managed to split his being into 6 different people, referred to as satellites, Satorato, kanji literally meaning cats, or offshoots, Bunshin, which share Vegapunk's brain via punk records. These satellites all identify as Dr. Vegapunk and will introduce themselves as such, but also possess their own names and number designations to distinguish them. The satellites are also distinguished by embodying a particular aspect of Vegapunk's personality. They also use different first-person pronouns and speech patterns. His true body is called the Stella. The method Vegapunk used in order to split his being into 6 different entities is still unknown. Punk 01, Shaka Good. Punk 02, Lilith Evil. Punk 03, Edison Thinking. Punk 04, Pythagoras Wisdom. Punk 05, Atlas Violence. Punk 06, York Greed. Appearance. Vegapunk is a relatively tall elderly man, standing just under Jinbe in height, without his brain, with slender limbs and red cheeks. He has a noticeably elongated but neatly sliced head and has a shaft driven in to support a structure resembling the top of an apple and its leaf. His forehead is remarkably wide, his tongue is very long, while his eyes are close to his potato nose. He has a bald head on top, but has spiky hair on the sides, as well as a thick mustache. He wears a smock with SSG on the back, a polka dot shirt, dark pants, and Doem shoes. Before he cut out his brain, the size of his head had supposedly reached the height of giants. When he was 43 years old, Vegapunk had an enlarged head accounting for much of his height, and his hair was dark and covered most of his head. He wore a leather jacket, a light shirt, a belt, dark pants, and dress shoes. When he was part of the MADS, his head was much smaller with a bandage on the left side, his tongue wasn't sticking out, and lacked the mustache. He wore a Hawaiian shirt and goggles. Also, during Kuma's explanation on his Pacifista modification, he seems to wear yellow gloves and a striped shirt while wearing a lab coat. Personality. In his youth, Vegapunk was a generous person who cared very much for the inhabitants of his island, willing to help them with his inventions. He is considered the island's pride and joy, and the residents are still hoping for his return. Each of Vegapunk's 6 satellites possess a dominant personality trait that is presumably present in Vegapunk in general. While he has strong morals and a sense of justice and pride as a scientist, Shaka, he also possesses malevolent traits and an inclination to steal from others in order to fund his research, Lilith, and can be prone to greed, York. There is considerable conflict and reasoning between these 2 sides. He appears to be quite thoughtful and wise, Edison and Pythagoras, but can be prone to getting angry at other people's inability to properly replicate and utilize his technological developments, to the point of lashing out violently, Atlas. Unlike his former fellow scientist Caesar Clown, Vegapunk was far more moral about what he would do in pursuit of achievements. He refused to involve children in the gigantification process despite repeated failures. He also vetoed the creation or release of the H2S poison gas weapon for fear of it harming innocent people. Vegapunk also has a strongly idealistic and humanitarian side, proudly pronouncing his plans to use his future world-spanning inventions to help humanity and stop ongoing conflicts such as wars, even choosing to work for the world government out of belief he could do more good for people by doing so. Unfortunately, certain people, like Jewelry Bonnie, fail to see that side of Vegapunk as she was under the belief that he has no qualms with committing sacrifices and atrocities, personal or otherwise, in his air for greater knowledge and progress. He seems to have an interest for dragons, as he created 2 of them on Punk Hazard, and an artificial devil fruit that allows the user to transform into one. Although he deemed the fruit a failure, but that was only due to the user's dragon form not being the same color as the dragon form bestowed by the real devil fruit it was based on. On that note, Vegapunk is a serious perfectionist. He was seen bawling on the ground after Luffy had informed him of how an artificial devil fruit, which he had made from Kaido's Lineage Factor, had led its consumer to gaining the same mythical Zoan abilities, albeit with a different color scheme. He also seems to be aware of the dangers and nature a scientist has to bear, as he was fully aware that his research, especially regarding the O'Hara incident and the Void Century, would make him a threat to the government, calling it a scientist's nature to want to peek at answers, knowing he had uncovered too much of the past to be kept alive. He even knew that CP0 was sent to assassinate him and prevent him from continuing his research. He also seems to be insistent on the importance of his words in science, as he was annoyed by Luffy's ignorance and disinterest in his work, calling him out for his repeated disinterest. He appears to be honorable, as he granted Kuma his final wish as a human being, which was to program Kuma to protect the Thousand Sunny until the Straw Hat Pirates return. He has a verbal tick in which he adds, Quasar, Quasa, to his requests for help. Abilities and powers. While it is unclear when Vegapunk started using his satellites to split his workload, he himself is famed as the greatest scientific genius the world has ever known, having tremendous knowledge and unmatched understanding in all fields of science, from cell biology to military technology, at the beginning of his work on Karakuri Island as noted by Frankie. His scientific expertise is said to be at least 500 years ahead of his contemporaries. It seems that even in his youth, the scientist was a prodigy already considered a genius, but lacked the skills, funds, and materials to develop his inventions, although that did not stop him from theorizing the creation of Pacifista cyborgs, including their laser weapons back then. This is proven by the fact that Frankie was able to recreate the technologies by self-studying the blueprints Vegapunk left behind on his home island. Regardless, the creations and blueprints that he has left behind are considered invaluable, and any damage inflicted to them is considered a crime. He has read and fully memorized every single book that had been rescued from O'Hara. Vegapunk has a deep knowledge and understand of devil fruits, having studied many old texts about them. He is the only known person beside the five elders to realize the true nature of Luffy's devil fruit after witnessing his awakened form. He discovered exactly how devil fruit powers are transferred over to a user, and he was also the scientist behind the method of adding devil fruit powers into inanimate objects, such as swords and guns. By using this method, he was able to create a unique blood for his latest creation, the Seraphim, by extracting the lineage factor of a paramecia user, synthesizing it, creating the so-called green blood. He even went as far as having developed a theory about how devil fruits came into existence from his knowledge, theorizing that devil fruits are the embodiment of what humans desire and could become, which is also the reason why the sea, which he calls the mother of nature, rejects any devil fruit user and makes them unable to swim, as such behavior is loathed by the sea, and it considers these wishes to transcend the world people wish to live in as abnormalities. He is the one who modified Bartholomew Kuma into a cyborg, and he has produced many Pacifista replicas of him as well, granting them some of the abilities of Kazara's devil fruit in the process. These replicas bleed actual blood, like Kuma himself. However, they lack Kuma's own devil fruit abilities. After the 2-year time skip, Sentomaru revealed that the latest Pacifista had been further modified. These were later revealed to be the Seraphim, replicas of the 7 warlords of the sea in their youth, albeit with Lunarian traits. The lasers that are installed into the Pacifista were apparently supposed to be so advanced that only Vegapunk knew how to create them. It was also stated that the dragons found on Punk Hazard were Vegapunk's own creations. He was able to survive the explosion of Caesar Clown's mass murder weapon. It is unknown whether his Stella body was present and was sturdy enough to survive the explosion, or one of his satellite bodies was present in his stead. Via his research, he discovered ways of allowing marine ships to pass through the calm belts without fear of a Sea King attack, by covering the bottom of the ships with seastone. Devil fruit. Vegapunk ate the Nomi Nomi Nomi, a paramecia-type devil fruit that allows his brain to store an indefinite amount of information and recall everything he has ever learned. It also causes his brain and head to expand continuously as he acquires new knowledge. Satellites. Due to splitting himself up into 6 people, Vegapunk is now able to be many times more productive as his satellites are capable of working independently at the same time. The fact that each of his satellites can also be equipped with weapons, vehicles, and technology also makes Vegapunk drastically more difficult to handle in combat. The satellites are capable of communicating with each other via an earpiece and may also share senses, as Shaka was able to see what was around Lilith while the two of them were in different locations. necessary bodily functions can be assigned to one satellite, allowing the others to forego them. Currently, York is tasked with eating, sleeping, urinating, and defecating on behalf of the rest of the satellites. Scientific achievements. The following is a list of the research projects done under the name Vegapunk, and it is unknown for some of them whether it was Vegapunk himself or one of the satellites that is responsible for them. Early life. Vegapunk was born in the future country Baltimore on Karakuri Island. As a child, he designed and built several devices in his lab, including robotic animals. He also had hundreds of other ideas, ranging from weapons to experimenting with cellular structures. He once tried to create an in-ground heating system for the island's people using modified animals as his labor force. Unfortunately, Vegapunk lacked the tools and the funds needed to complete his project, but he was able to touch the people's hearts. At some point, he worked alongside Vinsmoke Judge within MADS, an illegal research team, and discovered the blueprint of life known as the Lineage Factor. When the world government caught wind of this, they deemed the research a threat, and Vegapunk was arrested. Service to the world government. After going to work for the world government, he became famous for his devil fruit research and for discovering that seastone can serve to counteract the effects of devil fruits on the user. Around 33 years ago, when Kaido was captured by the Marines, Vegapunk was able to extract a sample of his lineage factor to replicate his devil fruit, although the results were noted to be unsatisfactory. The world government wanted him to give the fruit to them, but Vegapunk considered it a failure and refused, leaving it on Punk Hazard. Sometime later, Kaido escaped Vegapunk's facility together with King, who was also captured. 22 years ago, several months after the O'Hara incident, Vegapunk took a trip to O'Hara to pay his respects to the late Professor Clover, where he came across the lake in the center of the island filled with books. The realization that this was the final stand made by O'Hara's scholars brought him to tears. Vegapunk noticed a group of giants pulling the books from the lake before being approached by Dragon, who had also come to pay his respects. Dragon explained to him that the giants were from Elbaf, and that they knew the value of the books. Dragon lamented Vegapunk's refusal to join the freedom fighters due to lack of resources, but Vegapunk explained that he felt his abilities were put to better use with the world government. Though he wished to take the books with him back to Punk Hazard, Vegapunk feared that his superiors would hear about the survival of O'Hara's library, and so entrusted them to the giants. Vegapunk later took a secret visit to Elbaf to read all of the rescued books in order to carry on the work of researching them. For years prior to the current storyline, he was leading chemical weapons tests in his lab on Punk Hazard. His former colleague, Caesar Clown, created an extremely powerful chemical weapon, and when Vegapunk attempted to dismiss Caesar for his reckless behavior, Caesar retaliated by detonating that weapon, turning Punk Hazard into a wasteland. The island was closed off after this incident and a dragon that Vegapunk created was also abandoned. Since Vegapunk had been leading the experiments, he was blamed for the incident. Before the time skip, he focused on developing human weapons called Pacifista, with Bartholomew Kuma as the test subject and with his research on Kizaru's devil fruit powers. He somehow managed to synthesize them and become the only person in the world with the technological prowess to manufacture functional and tangible laser beams that cause damage, which the world government now use in full force and mass production. Prior to the Summit War of Marineford, Vegapunk performed the final operation on Kuma, removing the last of Kuma's free will. However, upon Kuma's request, Vegapunk programmed the mission to protect the Thousand Sunny into Kuma's memory banks. Prior to going to marry Geos, Isho met with Vegapunk and the scientist revealed an invention that Isho believed could render the 7 warlords of the sea system obsolete. Egghead Arc. When Vegapunk was working on a warping experiment, it backfired and he got stuck inside the robot's armor. He called for help and claimed that his warping experiment had failed. Luffy headed his way to help Vegapunk and free him. Vegapunk then thanked him and recognized him as Dragon's son and knew he would come to Egghead. Vegapunk was then confronted by Bonnie, but he just commented on how much she's grown before turning his attention away to show Luffy and Chopper how to make their shoes float. However, he ended up flying too high in the air and begged for help. Bonnie instantly recognized that Vegapunk's head is shorter than it used to be. Vegapunk later explained to the group his background, as well how he created the satellites. In addition, he went on to explain the meaning behind Punk Records as well as his ultimate goal to have a database everybody has access to. He was, though, confronted by an extremely angry Bonnie, who demanded Vegapunk explain his reasons for turning her father into a cyborg, even threatening him with a lightsaber she had found earlier. However, the saber attracted a horde of insects, and after she had passed out, Vegapunk admitted to Luffy, Chopper, and Jinbe he that does not blame Bonnie for hating him, while understanding her resentment towards him. However, he then added he had something he had wanted to give to her. He then explained to the group his ultimate goal of providing free energy for everybody around the world, expressing his excitement and his certainness that once this has been done, a major cause for wars in the world would thereby be eliminated. On Luffy's question, he further explained that any attempt to get closer to solving this issue, the closer he got to find the power source that moved the Iron Giant, which he calls the Ancient Energy. However, he was fully aware he had uncovered too much of the past and that the government wanted him dead, and once again requested from Luffy to be taken out to the sea with him and his crew, and after Luffy agreed, told them to pack Bonnie and get to the Laba phase, vanishing seconds later himself. It turned out he had warped himself into the Laba phase himself, appearing in the observation room where the other satellites and the Straw Hats were observing Luffy's fight against Lucci. He then asked Nami what Luffy's latest transformation was, and after Nami asked him if it wasn't Luffy's Gum Gum fruit, Vegapunk told her that in not a single book of devil fruits Luffy's fruit was ever recorded. He marvelously observed Luffy's Gear 5 form and explained to the Straw Hats that this form just looked like a god from the ancient texts, who was supposed to be a warrior of liberation who would bring smiles to people, called Nika. Hearing that the Straw Hats never heard of this name, he explained to them that this name had been erased from history, but would always exist as long as people wish for him, concluding that all things were brought into the world with hope, including devil fruits. He then shared his theory about the existence of devil fruits with the Straw Hats, theorizing every devil fruit was a possibility for human evolution that someone desired, representing many branches of the future of humanity. However, according to him, this unnatural status was loathed by the sea, which he called the mother of nature, and explained why devil fruit users were unable to swim. He concluded his theory by explaining that those with powers would exist in different dimensions dreamed up by someone else before them, leaving every single Straw Hat speechless at this theory. If you like this content, don't forget to like and subscribe. See you later, bye bye.